Greetings and welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Gyesie, shamanic leadership guide and transformational coach here at Inner Mileage, where we help people understand the traumatic roots of their limiting self-beliefs so they can get over them, take inspired action, and live resonant lives right here, right now. So today we're going to be talking about the unseen battlefield, how empaths can recognize and shield themselves from toxic individuals. How empaths can recognize and shield themselves from toxic individuals. So the root of this is to realize that most of humanity is blind to the war raging around them and within them as well. And if you've ever felt surveilled, energetically depleted, or repeatedly sabotaged, you're not paranoid, you're perceptive. And what you're experiencing isn't just drama or bad luck, it's strategic warfare, energy warfare. We're diving into energy vampirism, gangstalking, energetic harvesting, and the cosmic reason you're being targeted. So let's start with understanding what energy vampirism is. So energy vampirism is the psychological, emotional, and spiritual theft of your life force. Some do it deliberately, others do it compulsively due to their own energetic deficits. And from a scientific perspective, think about the biofield. The biofield around us and in us is a measurable field of energy that surrounds every human being. And when two fields interact, two humans, one can siphon from the biofield of another, and so on. And when you think about this in the context of, again, another scientific evidence, brainwave entrainment, our brainwaves are or can be pulled into sync with others, making empathic people feel vulnerable to entrainment by toxic individuals operating at lower frequencies. Have you ever been to a concert and ever felt you were in sync with everybody, waving hands and singing heart to heart? That's exactly that kind of coherence. And you think about the neuroscience of empathy, we have mirror neurons, very active mirror neurons, particularly if you are an empath. And these cells mirror emotional states, explaining why an empath feels what others feel. Because it's the same thing that also makes an empath, the mirror neurons, an empath easy to manipulate emotionally. Also because empaths operate more often in theta and gamma wave states. And these are the wave states linked to intuition, creativity, and compassion. The exact location that is primed for psychic invasion. So let's get into energy vampires and the types of energy vampires. Of course, this is to make this video more palatable, and there are probably different ways of looking at it, but I'll stick with these for this purpose. The first is the victim vampire. The one that's constantly overwhelmed, always needing you, but never changing. They're always on edge, always in a hurry, always have something going on. And of course, there's the narcissist. They're the type of person that idealizes, devalues, and discards, riding your energy highs to fuel their own self-image. And then there's the gaslighter, the kind of person that manipulates perception to destabilize your intuition, you see. And then there's also the trauma-bonded partner, or parent, the type that keeps you hooked in a loop of obligation and shame. I've had those experiences. And then finally, let's talk a bit about the spiritual vampire, the type of individual that uses love, light, and spiritual bypassing to exploit your guilt or awakening. In fact, this is the worst kind, the spiritual narcissist, because they sound like they are awakened, they know the right things to say, but really it's a performance, all designed to take from you. From a spiritual perspective, in the Cabala, it talks about klipot, which are shells of spiritual impurity that cling to the divine spark and feed on it. Same thing explaining this vampiristic energy. In shamanic traditions, parasitic energies attach to unhealed trauma and shame wounds. This explains why narcissists are narcissists, and nearly every narcissist is traumatized in some way, which is how they become narcissistic. And also in the Gnostic text, there's this description of archons. They are beings that mimic human thought and feed on fear and confusion. So their primary diet is fear, right? So let's get into gangstalking. What is gangstalking? Gangstalking is a covert, multi-person, often systematized effort to observe, surveil, isolate, and psychologically destabilize you or a specific target. And this is often an empath or a whistleblower or a mystic or a truth teller. And it works in many different ways. It's used in the military with psyops, where there's mimicry, where they copy your speech, there's sensory overload, there's sleep deprivation, and digital surveillance. These techniques are mirrored energetically and psychologically in what many empaths report as gangstalking, especially after spiritual awakenings or life shifts. So mimicry, sensory overload, sleep deprivation, digital surveillance. Is there any psychological or academic proof to this? Yes. So in Stanford prison experiment by Philip Zimbardo, a very troubling one, it showed how people will adopt cruel behavior if it's group sanctioned. So that's an example of how this group gangstalking happens, right? And you think about cults and groupthink, like the work done by Janis. Your groups often target dissenters and scapegoats to preserve the collective ego. So you can't be in a cult or a cultish-like environment if you're a free thinker. So how does energy harvesting look and feel like? How do you know it's happening to you? It happens when you feel drained after specific interactions with specific people. You can tell it in your being. You feel tired, exhausted, depleted, drained. That's how you know, because they siphon from you. Remember the earlier reference to energy siphoning? Then there are also synchronicities that feel manipulated. Like, oh, you're from Japan? I was in Japan too. Or random misfortunes after saying no or setting boundaries. Suddenly, the person you said no to has this misfortune that means you have to go rescue them. And there's also this notion of nightmares, sudden anxiety, and psychic pressure from these people. You feel it. So, from a spiritual warfare perspective, since I'm giving you all these examples, it's important to realize that the demonic mimicry is real because certain energies replicate loved ones or spiritual symbols to gain access. So you have to be discerning, and discerning comes through trusting your instincts and listening and paying attention to it. And it gets stronger, that relationship, and clearer. Also, empaths are seeded with light codes to disrupt dark networks. And the more activated you become, the more disruptive your presence is. So why does this happen to empaths? Why? Well, it's because empaths have increased activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. That is the part that's tied to emotional regulation, as well as moral decision making and being sensitive to other people, just like with the mirror neurons. And in highly sensitive people, there's more response to the nervous system, which makes the HSP, the highly sensitive person, a walking antenna for collective emotions. Then, of course, there's vibrational resonance. Empaths frequently operate at high states, alpha, theta states, and these are healing states. And narcissists and manipulators and bullies and disembodied spirits seek those frequencies because they can't access them naturally. And of course, this also happens because of spiritual contracts and initiations. For example, you chose this frequency, right? Spiritual awakenings often happen because of betrayal and attacks, just like in the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna was awakened to the reality of war. There's also this concept of the wound in the womb. In other words, through suffering, the empath learns to protect, discern, and command energy. It's the way you develop this. So, empaths are typically born into dysfunctional families as soul breakers. And if this resonates with you, type transform in the comment section or send me a message and let us know what your experiences are. And you've been targeted at work and wherever you are because you expose shadow systems with your integrity. You also attract spiritual narcissists because you radiate light and they want access to it without doing the work. So how do you protect yourself? What are some things you can do to protect yourself from these energies? Well, it's important to realize that Sun Tzu says all warfare is based on deception. So recognize that your attackers often wear disguises. They're lovers, bosses, healers, family. Study their energetic footprint, not their persona. Then it's important to know thyself and know thy enemy. In other words, track energy patterns. Create a log or a journal of emotional, psychic, and physical challenges around certain people and events. And it's important to recognize that victorious warriors win first and go to war. In other words, don't wait for attacks. Practice preemptive energetic shielding and daily cleansing as part of your way of being. And there's many other things you can do. I won't go into all those details today. But if you want to learn more about how you can use the mirror to shield yourself, how you can use golden light or frequency music, these are all things that we help you with, in addition to gray rocking, yellow rocking, or no contact, all influenced by reparenting yourself through internal family systems, reclaiming your narrative so you can shift the dynamics, realizing that from a quantum perspective, the observer effect proves that your attention creates your reality. So what you pay attention to becomes the currency of your energy. Understand this and begin to free yourself, knowing that there's no one like you. You are not an anomaly. You are the guardian, the light weapon